The sky above Earth was calm and blue until it wasn't. A sudden flash ripped through the clouds and a giant alien ship appeared without warning. It was shaped like a golden serpent, glowing with alien symbols. Everyone in the United Earth base froze, staring at the sky with wide eyes. The alarms didn't even get a chance to sound before the ship slowly descended near the Earth Council building. People came running, soldiers rushed to their stations, and diplomats whispered in fear. They all knew what this meant. The Solari Dominion had arrived. From the ship's belly, a long platform slid out. At the edge of it stood a tall alien woman with silver hair, glowing skin, and eyes like burning stars. Her name was Telexa, Supreme Envoy of the Kellery Empire. She was known across 38 sectors for her sharp tongue and ruthless style. Worlds had fallen after just one visit from her. She didn't need weapons, because her voice alone could break leaders. Today she had come to Earth. Commander Elias Grant stood at the front of the welcome team. He didn't flinch as the alien guards marched down first. Wearing armor that looked alive, they moved like shadows, never blinking, never speaking. Behind them came Telexa, her long black cape floating in the wind. Her presence was heavy, as if she carried the weight of 100 worlds. Her lips curved into a small smile, but it wasn't a kind one. "So this is Earth," she said, her voice smooth but cold. "You're smaller than I imagined." The other diplomats bowed quickly, showing respect, even fear, but Grant stood tall, arms crossed. Meeting her gaze without fear, Talexa's smile faded slightly. "You must be Commander Grant," she said, walking closer. "I expected a man of honor, not a man without manners." Grant didn't move. "And I expected an ambassador, not a conqueror in a crown." A silence fell over the group. The soldiers tensed. And one of Talex's guards raised a strange weapon. She lifted her hand slightly, and the guard stepped back. Her eyes stayed on Grant, studying him like a puzzle she couldn't solve. "You're brave," she said, "or foolish?" "Maybe both," he answered, "but I know bullies when I see them." That made her laugh, not loudly, but enough to send a chill down spines. Telexa turned to the others. "Bring me to your leaders," she said. "We have much to discuss." As they walked toward the council hall, Grant walked beside her. She noticed it and frowned. "No guards?" she asked. "I don't need guards," he replied. "You're the guest, not the threat." "Funny," she said. "In most places I visit, they hide their children before I arrive." Grant looked ahead. "On Earth, we teach our children to face fear, not run from it." The council hall was a round room with clear walls, showing the sky and stars above. It was built to impress, but Telexa looked around with boredom. "Primitive," she muttered. "Strong," Grant corrected. "Made from Earth's strongest crystal and sealed with old war tech." "Ah," she said. "So you do have claws." "We just don't show them to guests," he said, holding the door open. Inside, Earth's leaders waited, nervous but proud. They stood as Telexa entered, but she waved her hand. "Sit," she said. "This won't take long." She stood in the center and began listing her demands. Earth must share resources, pay tribute, and recognize the Cellery as supreme rulers. She said it all without blinking. As if reading from a menu, the council members looked at each other in shock. One of them asked, "And if we refuse?" Telexa smiled. "Then you will be." Studied Grant stepped forward. "You came here not to talk, but to dominate. We won't bow to fear." Telexa's eyes narrowed. "No," she said softly, "but you will bow eventually." He stepped closer to her, lowering his voice. "Earth is not what you think," he said. "And I'm not just a soldier." Their eyes locked. A storm of pride and power between them. Telexa didn't back down. But something in her eyes flickered doubt, curiosity, maybe respect. The meeting ended without agreement. Telexa returned to her ship, but her smirk was gone. She looked back. Once at the Earth Council building, then whispered to herself, "Perhaps this world is more interesting than I expected." And deep inside the golden ship, her message to the Cellery Emperor was short. "Earth is not soft," she said. "A fire hidden under calm, especially their commander." The room was silent, but the tension felt louder than thunder. Telexa stood at the center of Earth's United Council chamber, her arms folded, her golden skin glowing faintly under the dome lights. Her words had already shaken the leaders, but she wasn't finished not yet. "I am not here to beg," she said with a smile. "I am here to measure how tall you stand before you fall." Commander Grant leaned against the side wall, arms crossed again, watching her closely. He had dealt with warlords, rebels, pirates, and traitors, but never was someone who smiled while threatening the whole planet, the other council members whispered. Nervous and confused, "Should we agree to temporary cooperation?" One muttered, "She might be bluffing," another said. But Telexa heard it all. Her ears were sharp, and her pride sharper. "I offer mercy first," she continued. "Your people will serve the Solari as allies, not slaves, if you accept." Now, she pulled out a thin, glowing strip from her belt and floated it over the council table. It projected images, ships, planets, numbers, and a long treaty full of demands. "What?" Grant stepped forward slowly, eyes locked on the data. 2% of Earth's population drafted into Solari service, he said. "Monthly tribute of minerals and control over orbital travel." Telexa tilted her head. "Only fair," she said, "for the safety we offer." "We never asked for your safety," Grant replied, voice steady. "We've earned our peace with our own blood." Telexa walked toward him, her step smooth and quiet like a predator's. "You speak like a warrior," she said. "But I see only a small leader of a small world." Without a word, Grant pressed a button on his wrist. The lights dimmed, and the chamber walls changed, instead of glass showing the sky. The walls now showed holograms, footage from Earth's past wars, nuclear clouds rising, alien ships crashing, soldiers pulling civilians from rubble, the room filled with screams from history. Not loud, but enough to chill the bones. Telexa froze, her eyes flicking between the images. Grant's voice came through the silence. "This is what Earth looks like when it fights back. This is what we became when we were pushed too far." Telexa didn't speak for a moment, then she stepped forward, her voice quieter now. "And now you hide these claws under a smile," Grant nodded. "Because peace is earned when the sword is no longer needed." But we never threw it away. Suddenly, one of Telexa's guards moved, his hand reaching toward his weapon. Grant didn't flinch before the guard could even finish his motion. The chamber defense system locked on, lasers tracing a red dot on the alien's forehead. "No weapons in the council," Grant said calmly. "You're not above the rules here." Telexa raised her hand again, and the guard backed off. Eyes wide, she was quiet now, but her gaze was not soft. "You set a trap," she said. "No," Grant answered. "I set a boundary." A silence fell again, heavy and deep, for the first time. The other council members looked at Grant with more confidence. They realized he wasn't just a soldier, he was Earth's line in the sand. Telexa turned to leave, but paused at the door. She looked back, her expression unreadable. "You may be smaller than the cellar," she said, "but your pride is tall," Grant replied. "We call it dignity, outside." Talex's ship shimmered under the daylight, its engines humming softly. She stood on the landing ramp, arms behind her back. One of her aides whispered. "They did not bow," she answered. "No, they stood." Inside her private chamber aboard the ship, Telexa stared at the treaty she had brought. She tapped it once, and it folded into light and vanished. Then she activated a secure channel to the Celery High Command. "They will not accept the terms," she said flatly. "But Earth is different." "What do you mean?" came the reply. Robotic and sharp. Telexa looked out the window, where Grant stood far below, his figure small but still standing tall. "I mean they are dangerous," she said. "Not because they have great weapons, but because they choose not to use them." "And the commander?" the voice asked. Telexa's lips tightened. "He is a problem," she said. "I am not sure I want to remove him yet." Far below, Grant walked away from the chamber, not smiling, but not worried either. He knew she would return, and next time, she might not just test Earth's pride, she might test her own. The invitation was unexpected after the fierce council standoff. Telexa received a short message from Commander Grant. "Dinner tonight, no guards, no preserved. Just a conversation." Telexa narrowed her eyes at the words, reading them 3 times a trap, perhaps, or worse, a gesture of confidence. She arrived late, not out of rudeness, but control. dressed in a soft cloak instead of her usual armor. She stepped into the quiet dining chamber with silent steps. There were no armed men, no security walls, only candles, soft lights, and a table with 2 chairs. Earth's food, not synthesized pellets like her people used. Steam rose from the dishes, warm and gentle like a home. Grant stood as she entered, wearing no armor either, only a dark uniform and tired eyes. He didn't bow, didn't salute. He simply nodded. "Glad you came," he said, pulling out her chair. She hesitated, then sat. "Bold of you," she said. "Sharing a table with someone who threatened your world." Grant poured her water. "From a clear glass pitcher, we've eaten with worse," he replied. Telexa arched an eyebrow. "Who?" "Ourselves," he said quietly. "In war, we become monsters to stop monsters for a moment." The flames on the candles flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls. Telexa looked down at the plate-roasted vegetables, soft bread, some kind of grilled meat. She picked up the fork, curious, not poisoned. She asked, half macking. "If it was," Grant said, "I'd be eating it too." He took a bite from his own plate to prove it. They ate in silence for a while. The tension now replaced by something stranger, curiosity. Telexa studied him, while he chewed, wondering what secrets lay behind that calm face. He wasn't like other humans she had interrogated or studied. He didn't try to please, or fear her, or even fight her. He just existed, like an immovable mountain. Finally, Grant spoke again. "Do you always lead with fear?" Telexa wiped her mouth gently. "It works until it doesn't," he said. "Until someone says no." She placed her fork down. Leaning slightly forward, "You think kindness wins wars?" "No," Grant said, "but it wins the reasons for war." That sentence made her pause. Her eyes didn't glow like before. Her voice didn't hold thunder. "What do you know of my people?" she asked. "Only what you let us see," he replied. "Pride, structure, power, and pain hidden behind gold." Talex's fingers clenched slightly. "You know nothing." Grant didn't flinch. "I know leaders who smile to hide loneliness. I know warriors who yell because no one ever listened to their whispers." A silence filled the room, deeper than before, outside the window. The Earth's night sky shimmered with stars. Grant stood and walked to a small shelf. Pulling out a bottle, "Human wine," he said. "Real, from the soil, not lab-grown." He poured 2 glasses. Offering one to her, Telexa stared at the drink, then took it. They drank, not as enemies. Not quite as friends, just as beings, tired of masks. She looked around the room, noticing small details, photos of Grant's team, medals, an old worn-out book. "This is your home," she said, more surprised than questioning. He nodded. "I wanted you to see where I think, where I feel." She looked down at her hands. "So used to holding commands and holograms, not warm drinks or soft bread. I was raised to be sharp," she said quietly. "Sharper than any weapon," Grant nodded. "That's why I didn't invite a blade tonight." Their eyes met. No battle this time, just something unspoken and deep. Telexa leaned back, finally exhaling. "This was clever," she said. "Dinner instead of debate." Grant half smiled. "You learn more from a meal than a meeting." She looked at her empty plate, then back at him. "You don't fear me anymore." "I never did," he replied. "I just wanted to understand you." She didn't speak after that. But as she stood to leave, she looked back once more. "Perhaps I should understand you too," she whispered as she left the chamber. Her guards moved to flank her, but she raised her hand. "No," she said firmly. "I'll walk alone tonight." And in the sky above, her ship floated silently but for the first time, it didn't feel superior. It just felt far from home. And maybe, just maybe, Earth wasn't the wild place she once believed. Maybe the wild one was her. The command room was silent as Talex's message played across every Earth defense monitor. Her voice was calm, but her words struck like lightning. "You have 30 hours to reconsider your position," she said, "or the Solari Dominion will take what is needed by force." The air grew heavier. World leaders exchanged tense glances. Soldiers tightened their grips on weapons, and satellites quietly aligned in orbit. Commander Grant didn't speak, not at first. He stood alone on the observation deck, staring into space. Far above, Telexa's ship hovered like a golden predator. Quiet but ready, she had returned to her throne of clouds, watching from above, like a goddess preparing for war. But Grant wasn't afraid. He had dealt with arrogance before. He knew what pride did, blinded. It made the powerful forget that power alone doesn't always win. He walked into the strategy chamber, where generals were already planning for the worst. "They're posturing," one said, "but we must assume she'll strike. We'll raise the orbital shields," another added. "Move our fleets to defensive lines," Grant raised his hand. "Wait," he said. "They want us to panic. They want us to blink first." The room fell quiet. "What do you propose?" a general asked. "I want to talk to her," Grant said. In private, murmurs erupted. "That's dangerous." One advisor said, "She threatened invasion." Another warned. Grant looked up, his voice calm. "She didn't threaten." He said she tested. An hour later, Telexa stood inside the private diplomatic chamber on the edge of Earth's space station. The room was small, plain, with just 2 chairs and a single white table. No guards, no weapons. Only the unspoken tension hanging in the air. Grant entered. Quietly holding a small case, he placed it on the table and sat down. Telexa didn't sit. "Not yet. What is this?" she asked coldly. "A lesson," he said, opening the case. Inside was an old human artifact, a rusted bullet from Earth's final World War. The metal was scratched and blackened, but the weight of history clung to it like a ghost. This ended cities, Grant said. It burned forests, homes, dreams. It killed millions. Telexa stared at it, then slowly sat down. "You honor this?" she asked, confused. "No," Grant said. "We remember it, so we don't become it again." She didn't respond, but her eyes didn't leave the bullet. "You think this scares me?" she asked after a pause. Grant shook his head. "No." He said, "I think it reflects you," that made her flinch only slightly. "But enough. You are strong, sharp, unbending," he continued. "But inside, there's still something broken, something burned." Telexa leaned forward, eyes glowing. "Faintly, careful, human," she said. "You walk the edge of insult. I walk the truth," Grant replied. "And truth is the only thing that can cut pride." A long silence passed, then Telexa stood. Turning away toward the viewing screen, her ship hung above Earth and beyond. The stars stretched forever. "I was taught Earth was simple," she said softly, emotion-driven, weak, primitive. Grant joined her at the window, arms behind his back. "And what do you think now?" he asked. She was quiet, then she whispered, "I think we underestimated what it means to be human." Behind them, the room dimmed, and a silent alarm pulsed in the floor. Solari drones had entered Earth's orbit without clearance. "Your ships are moving," Grant said, watching her carefully. "They act on protocol," she answered. "But I can stop them." Grant stepped closer. "Then do it," he said. "Show your empire that diplomacy is not weakness." She turned to him, and for the first time, her face showed something new: conflict. She tapped her wrist device and issued a quiet command. Above Earth, the drones stopped, then retreated. The stars were clear again. Grant nodded. "You just made your first choice," he said. "One not made by the Empire." Telexa exhaled slowly. "Do not mistake this for surrender," she said. "I only delayed the storm." "Maybe," Grant replied. "Or maybe you've started a new weather pattern." As she turned to leave, her voice was low but firm. "This conversation isn't over," she said. Grant watched her go. "No," he whispered to himself. "It's just begun." The hall beneath Earth's central command was silent and dim. Far below the surface, past secured doors and ancient war records, was a room not on any official map. Only Commander Grant held the clearance, and tonight he waited inside, alone. Soft hiss echoed as the steel door opened. Telexa entered slowly, wearing a plain black robe, her golden armor left behind. She didn't speak right away. Her eyes scanned the room, taking in the shadows, the screens, the silence. "You brought me here to scare me?" she asked, her voice cold but tired. Grant didn't move. I brought you here because I know who you are, he said quietly. She narrowed her eyes. You already said that, Commander. No, he said, stepping forward, holding a small holographic tablet in one hand. I mean who you really are? He tapped the screen, and an image appeared in the Aaron Old classified file from Solari Records. Stolen through deep encryption, the photo showed a young alien girl in ceremonial robes, standing beside the Celery Empress, not as a daughter, not officially. But the resemblance was clear, and the note under the file said only one word, hidden. Talexa's expression didn't change at first. Then she turned her back, staring. At the far wall, who gave you this? She asked, her voice low and sharp. Does it matter? Grant replied, You weren't born to lead. You were born to be hidden. I earned my rank, she hissed. Yes, he said, but you fight like someone trying to prove she belongs. Talexa suddenly spun around, eyes glowing bright. I rose through fire, through war, through silence and betrayal, she snapped. I bled for my title. Grant didn't back down, and yet, you still feel the need to be feared, he said, because if they don't fear you, they might ignore you. That hit something deep. Her shoulders tightened, her fists clenched, but her voice cracked as she whispered. You don't understand. Grant took a slow step closer. You were born in shadows, he said softly. But that doesn't mean you have to live there. Her lips trembled, just a little, and for the first time, she sat down. Not like a ruler claiming space, but like someone finally tired of holding everything up. I was never allowed to be weak, she whispered. If I cried, they punished me. If I failed, they erased the record. My name. It was never meant to rise. Grant sat across from her, silent, letting her speak, letting her walls crack. Every time I enter a world, she said, I walk like I own it. Because if I don't, I disappear and no one will remember. The girl they never saw, he nodded slowly. I've seen soldiers like you, he said. Men and women who built armor around their hearts because someone told them they were nothing. Talexa looked at him, tears trapped behind stubborn pride. But you looked at me like I was still real. Grant leaned forward. Because you are, he said. More than an envoy, more than a title. She reached out slowly, touching the old file floating between them. Then with a flick of her wrist, she deleted it. I don't want to be ruled by it anymore, she said. If I'm going to lead, I'll do it my way. Grant smiled faintly, then lead with truth. Talexa stood again. This time taller, not because she was pretending, but because something heavy had fallen away. She looked back at him as she reached the door. This doesn't mean I trust you, she said. I'm still watching. I expect nothing less, Grant said, nodding. As the door slid shut behind her, the lights brightened again. And for the first time since her arrival, the Earth didn't feel like an enemy to her, felt like a mirror, one that didn't lie in her ship that night. She looked at her reflection, in the polished glass, not the glowing eyes or royal bearing, but the woman behind it. No one had ever seen her before, not like that. But now, one human did, and strangely, she wasn't afraid of it anymore. Asterisk, the storm hit Earth's capital just after midnight. Rain poured like silver needles, and thunder echoed through the sky. Most people stayed indoors. But one figure walked alone through the empty streets, cloak soaked and hair falling loose. Over her face, it was Talexa. No guards, no armor, no crown. Just her, soaked and silent. She reached Commander Grant's private quarters without sending a message. She didn't knock. She stood there for several seconds, her fingers trembling by her sides. Then the door slid open quietly, and Grant stood there, surprised but calm. Her lips moved, but no words came out at first, only water dripping from her chin. Then, with a soft voice that barely broke the silence, she said, I need help. Grant stepped aside, saying nothing. Just motioning her inside, she walked in slowly, her steps unsure, so unlike the woman who once demanded entire worlds bow before her. He handed her a towel, but she didn't take it. Instead, she stood in the middle of the room, staring at the warm fire flickering in the corner. I thought I had to win everything, she whispered. That power was the only way to survive. Grant sat down without interrupting. He let her speak not as a commander, but as a human. I was ready to conquer this planet. She continued, ready to force you to kneel, but you didn't. You stood, even when I raised my voice, even when I threatened everything. She finally took the towel and wrapped it around herself. Shivering, Grant handed her a warm mug, steam rising gently from it. She held it like something fragile, something precious. For the first time, she said, I don't want to win. I just want to understand why I was always made to feel like I had to, Grant. Nodded slowly. That's not surrender. He said, that's freedom. She sat beside him, closer than before. Their shoulders nearly touching, I read every human file before I arrived. She said, your wars, your crimes, your endless hunger, I came ready to judge. And now? Grant asked quietly. I still see the hunger, she replied. But I see something else to mercy. There was silence again, but it wasn't empty, it was warm. The kind that lets wounds breathe. Talexa looked into the fire, her voice softer now. I've never shown weakness to anyone. You didn't tonight either, Grant said. Showed strength in a different way. She looked at him then. Her eyes no longer glowing with alien power, just tired, uncertain, real. Why didn't you fight me? She asked, why didn't you crush me when you had the chance? Because I didn't come to win either, he said. I came to listen. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Her pride still fought to stay upright. But her heart wanted to collapse, and for once she let it, just a little. I don't want to go back to the celery way. She said, I want to write something new. Grant stood, walking to his desk. He picked up a data scroll and placed it between them. A joint treaty, he said, built on respect, not fear, equal terms, shared knowledge, independent. Systems, she stared at the scroll, then reached out and touched it with shaking fingers. I want to help write it, she said, but not as a supreme envoy, just as Talexa. Grant smiled for the first time that night. Then let's begin. She stayed until the storm passed. Both of them sitting beside the fire, rewriting what diplomacy could look like. Not with threats or ultimatums, but with honesty, trust, and quiet understanding. When she finally rose to leave, the sky had cleared. She looked at Grant one more time, her voice steady but warm. You're not like anyone I've ever met, she said. Neither are you, he replied as she walked away. Ow. The stars above shimmered like they were watching, and Talexa, for the first time in her life, felt like she wasn't walking alone anymore. The Galactic Assembly Hall was filled with silence, not because no one was speaking, but because everyone had stopped breathing. For the first time in its long history, a Solari envoy stepped onto the stage not in full golden armor, but in a plain Earth-made robe. Her name echoed across systems to Lexa, once feared, now watched with awe and confusion. Cameras floated in the air, transmitting the event live to hundreds of worlds. And standing just off stage, hidden from view but not from her heart, was Commander Elias Grant. He had not come to speak, only to witness. Talexa took a deep breath and began, I was raised to believe that power meant control, she said. That strength was shown by how loudly others obeyed you. I believed humanity would kneel like so many before them. Murmurs spread through the assembly. Her words were not the typical celery introduction. But she didn't stop. I arrived with threats, she continued, but I left with lessons. She turned slightly, glancing toward where she knew Grant stood. A human taught me that dignity does not come from dominance. It comes from restraint, from choosing peace when war is easier. The crowd with stunned ambassadors stared in disbelief. Nobles whispered, warriors narrowed their eyes. Was this the same Talexa who once leveled a moon to prove a point? She raised a treaty scroll high above her head. This is the new agreement between Earth and the Solari, she said, not signed under pressure, but shaped by equal hands. The scroll glowed with Earth's emblem and the celery crescent twined for the first time in history. She placed it on the assembly's central altar, the place where only the most sacred pacts were honored. A long silence followed. Then slowly, the assembly began to rise, one delegate at a time. Not clapping, not cheering, but standing in respect. Telexa looked down, her heart heavy but light at the same time. This was not the applause of victory, it was the silence of transformation. Later, in the quiet of Earth's gardens, Telexa stood beneath a tree, her fingers touching the leaves like they held answers. Grant walked up beside her, hands in his pockets. "You shook the stars today," he said. "I just spoke the truth," she replied. He smiled. "That's what makes it powerful." She turned to him slowly, something in her eyes not quite the same. "You changed me," she said, her voice gentle now, "and I don't know what to do with that." "Then don't do anything yet," Grant said. "Just live with it." She looked down, then back up. "I thought being untouchable made me strong," Grant nodded. "But being touched, letting someone reach you, that's the real strength." She stepped closer, the stars above shining down like they were listening. "I once believed no one could ever stand beside me," she whispered. "But now, I hope you will." There were no declarations, no oaths, no fire, just two souls who had crossed pride, war, and silence, and still found a reason to stand side by side. And in the heart of the galaxy, our power once ruled without mercy. One woman's surrender lit a path for thousands. Because when the untouchable finally reached out, it wasn't to command, it was to connect, and a human was there to hold her hand.